Hey, and welcome. You're tuning in to Unbreakable Hope with me, your host, Jessica Rose. This podcast is all about seeking the light. In each episode, we chat with someone who has either overcome the darkness or who is actively spreading light within their own community. So let's jump into today's episode. I'm thrilled to introduce today's special guest, Maria Rose. She has accomplished so much in her life, from being an author to a musician to a screenwriter, a CEO of a company, a mother, and an amazing human being. So I hope you stick with me as we go through this chat of all the things that she's gone through in life, or well, at least some of the things she's gone through in life, and her positive outlook and the growth. She has a lot of life lessons that she's willing to share, to include a free course for you. So let's jump into today's episode. Thank you so much for being here today. I can't wait to hear more about your story.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm absolutely honored to be with you today.
Oh, well, I'm really excited that our mutual friend Landon connected us, but I would love to pass it over to you to tell us a little bit more about you, and then we'll just jump into our chat.
Absolutely. Okay, so my name is Maria Rose, and first and foremost, I am a mama. So my daughters are 16 and 17 years old. I'm an entrepreneur, and I launched my screenwriting company, Pure Dreams Productions, almost 10 years ago. And so I write sci-fis, psychological thrillers, autobiographical dramas, and just anything that really sends a message of redemption and transformation. That's my jam. And I'm a published author. I recently released a memoir called The Pen Was Always in Your Hand. And it was actually #1 on Amazon for 3 days in the biographies category. So that was like, whoa, I did not even I did not even expect that. I was just putting it out there just to talk about my life story so far because it's been absolutely crazy. And I am a domestic violence survivor. I experienced that in my first marriage. And last but not least, I am a motivational speaker. And that actually ties into my being a survivor because I believe that sharing our story is how we share hope. And it's a part of my why. And my message is simple with my speaking engagements. And that is, you're not stuck. No one is stuck. That you are the prisoner and you are the jail warden, and you can let yourself out any day you choose to live the life that you've always imagined. So that's me.
That's beautifully said, and just a testimony for how much you've grown and been able to accomplish. It's just that personal growth and light that you're seeing there. I'm so excited to dive in and learn more because so many cool things there right off the bat, like psychological thrillers. What? So, personal curiosity, like how did you get involved in that? Because that's super fun, and I do love a good psychological thriller. So now I'm gonna have to like keep my eye out on Pure Dream Productions and what you guys are putting out there.
Yes. Okay. So all of my projects, everything I'm working on, including my blog and a workshop that I created, all of that is on authormariarose.com. Just for you to know, and anyone that wants to kind of check that out. But how I got involved, honestly, so like you, I've always loved psychological thrillers. You know, I want to be taken on a trip when I watch a film. You know, movies like Inception and Interstellar and, just films that aren't cliche, that kind of challenge you and start conversations on your way home from the movies is what started the pot kind of stirring, like, what do I like to do? Because my journey to finding my passion, finding my niche was so much longer than I thought it was going to be. I just knew I was supposed to be a singer. And I released 3 albums on iTunes. And then I just knew I was supposed to be an author, and I was just going to hunker down and be Hemingway and find a way to like cigarettes and just smoke and, and write my books. But when I kind of stumbled into screenwriting through a contest. So I was going through hard times, and I saw a contest online for a drama screenwriting competition that had a $1,500 cash prize. And I thought to myself, how hard can it be to write a winning screenplay? I mean, this is like what, 90 pages, and it was that naivety that I almost needed. And I think you need to do anything, you know, uh, big and grandiose in terms of a life shift. And so I did not win the contest, but what I won was this undying love for screenwriting. And so that just telling stories through cinema is for me the greatest gift that I've discovered in my life as far as art and creativity goes.
That's super fun. That's something when growing up, I wanted to be an ice skater.
Yeah.
And my parents were like, oh, we don't like, but they were both active duty and there wasn't a close training rink and blah, 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 blah. So I said, okay, fine. I'm going to be an actress because for me, movies were my escape and they still are. Anyone who knows me knows like if you want to get me to sit still and sit in one place for a period of time and not do three to
Yeah.
four things at once, go to the movie theater. Like I can
Mm,
sit and watch a movie at my own house without, you know, sorting pennies, looking for the one that is like the one that actually gets a lot of money. I don't know. That was totally
right.
something that actually happened between my husband and I.
Yeah.
Okay, I can't just like sit here. I got to do something. So
Right.
it is
That productivity bug. It's a,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So I love that being able to write and how crazy is that? You're like, I'm just gonna enter this contest, why not? No big deal. And then now here you are with your own production company. That's so amazing.
It's been a journey that has unfolded in ways where it was like part my own pursuit and not giving up, but then also part providence, where I kind of even had a moment where I kind of challenged my faith in a way. And which sounds crazy. It sounds crazy, but I really did. I prayed about it one day many years ago, and I said, God, if this is what you want me to do with my life, then help me pay my bills in entirety this month with solely screenwriting.
Ooh.
It was like, whoa, like I think there's a verse against that, right? Don't challenge God. Like, so I don't know what I was thinking, but I was just so desperate for a sign. And what's so wonderful is God knows our heart. And And I sure did. I got booked two screenwriting gigs out of nowhere. Both contacts, one came from email, one came from Instagram, and they added up to equal what my bills were that month. And so ever since then, I'm like, okay, this is this is a sign.
Wow. That is amazing. Especially from your childhood going to this point in your life. This has got to be one of those things like looking back and thinking of your childhood self, like, wow, look at how far I've come.
Wow, that's such a real and thought-provoking prompt because my childhood was extremely humble and I came from, I have six brothers and sisters. I have four brothers, two sisters. My parents were very happy in the 80s. They were doing their thing, popping out kids. And, so my father, for the first 10 years of our family life, was a janitor. And my mother stayed at home. So, we were very, very poor, very poor. And it's so funny because you don't know you're poor until a certain age. So for like the first 8 years of my life, I had no idea that we were broke, but not really. I mean, I had clothes, I had food, but, and my mom stayed at home, even though she was super duper educated, it's her, it was part of her life purpose to be a stay-at-home mom.
Hmm.
And so it was when I was 8 years old, around, well, I think I was like 7, 8, and I asked my dad for a bike, and he said, I can't afford that. And I remember thinking like my whole world was like broken open. Like, what do you mean we can't afford a bike? Like, are you okay? Are we okay? Like, and so that what I didn't know is that began this kind of this belief system that I ended up having to purge out of me that I was in lack, this lack identity. Uh, and I learned that that's where it started by writing my memoir. I had no idea. I'm like, oh my gosh, because writing it, I had to live through every chapter.
Mhm.
And it was so hard. But yeah, I looking at where I am now compared to that little girl who, if you took a snapshot of me after he told me I couldn't get a bike, I felt I felt shortchanged. And that was when I began to feel like I don't like my life.
Mhm. Yeah, I could
Yeah.
see that definitely making a huge shift. And that's, I think all of us, if we can think back to one moment, it's when your eyes are open to things because you only know what you know. And if
Yes.
it's the norm, it's the norm. And the next thing you know, you're like, oh, this isn't norm.
Yeah.
Or somebody is talking down or belittling you, which I'm sure that shifted a lot of your thought processes and how you were able to cope and handle situations as you got older too.
Absolutely. And that actually is what led me into my relationship with my ex-husband, that lack poverty mindset, because your priorities are all out of whack when you feel desperate,
Mhm.
when you feel like you are in serious, want to say essential needs. You're not thinking straight. And this is a long time ago. This is 20 years ago, and I uh, found myself being pursued by someone who was giving me things, you know, and but it what accompanied it was all of the toxic things that are your worst nightmare in a relationship. And so once I got on that train, it became something else, because it starts out with the bait and switch. It starts out with, I'm benefiting your life, and now I'm not benefiting your life, but you're locked in and you are conditioned.
Mhm.
And then you're just cruising down the tracks and you realize, wow, there's no destination to this train. It's just going to keep going and I'm going to have to jump off and I'm going to get hurt. There's no way. And I believe this actually kind of ties into a key point of my message whenever I talk to anyone about this subject, that there's really no way to leave a toxic situation in peace. There's no way to leave it and where all parties are happy, everyone agrees, and you just kind of, part ways in love and respect. And it's like if you're looking for that moment, you're going to be in that situation for a long time. You're going to have to jump off the train. It's going to hurt and you will heal.
Yeah. The thought that comes to my mind as you're talking about this is like the devil you know. So I love that analogy that you're using with the train. Like, you got to jump and yeah, it's going to hurt and you are going to heal, but it's like, but the grass isn't always green on the other side, right? So it's like, well, I know the devil I know here. I know the situation in here and there I don't know. And there I don't know is scary because I don't know it. And I think that's just like our society in general, right? That we fear the things we don't know or don't understand. Like,
Les Brown, yeah, he said something like that. He's one of my favorite speakers of all time. And he said that people prefer known hells to new heavens,
yeah.
just like what you're saying. And I was just like, wow, is it true? People and I think the reason why is because, at least for me, the reason why, let's see, because I've been divorced now for almost 13 years. So if I go back to that person, I did not believe that there was a better life for me. I genuinely didn't believe it because I hadn't really seen a super, you know, successful marriage. My parents are still married. Been married for 43 years now, but they aren't like, falling all over each other in love, like, and so, no, I didn't, mom, dad, I love you. But like, I didn't grow up like seeing, this incredible romance. And I thought that the best life that had to offer me was being able to pay my bills, a mediocre relationship, and maybe having some time to write something. I believe that.
Yeah, that's a huge thing is somebody once said to me, we accept the love we think we deserve. And I don't remember who said that to me. It's just stuck with me all these years. I'm like, "Whew, yeah, that's true." Because if we can't, I mean, that's with anything in life, not just even like relational, it's not just romantic relationships, is if we don't think it's possible, it's not possible.
That exactly. I didn't think it was possible. My paradigm was completely controlled by that thought. And I hadn't, my world hadn't been opened up. And a lot of it had to do with my age too, and I think we think in absolutes when we're younger, we just think, oh, things are always going to be this way. But it wasn't until honestly, I finished my memoir. Like, writing my life story so far was the hardest thing I've ever done emotionally,
Mm,
because I had to accept that narratives I created weren't true.
mm.
Because I could see, like, it was like watching a movie, writing the story, and,
Oh.
and then editing it. I had to read it several times. And so I'm reading about this girl named Maria, like, no, don't do that. And and I'm unpacking all of this objectively. And I realized that I was the author of this story, and that of everything that happened to me. And that just as much as I can write a fictional story in a screenplay and make anything I want happen to that character, including a triumphant ending, I was like, oh my gosh, I have that power. Like, I'm not stuck. I can write a whole new life for myself. And around this time, I decided to move to San Diego, across the country from Virginia. And I literally did that. I wrote a whole new story, and that actually leads into love, because I have a partner that has just completely transformed my idea of love and shown me that what I believed, once I was able to have a more inspiring idea of love. He's been able to show me that that's real and it's true. And that all happened because I got real, and I stopped lying to myself about what felt good. It felt good to play the victim. It felt good to say, you did this to me and this happened to me. And, if you hadn't been so toxic and,
Mm,
basic, I mean, for my situation, I was forced to get a divorce because there's domestic violence. He, had a very, very long affair with my brother's wife. So it was but Jerry Springer there. And so I was, there were a lot of things that I told myself, like, oh, this happened to you. But then I realized that I'm happening on life.
mm,
These are my decisions. And no one can make you do anything, literally. Even if you are, at gunpoint, you can still choose to go ahead and, like, that's your last day alive. Like, you still have a choice to do or not do whatever it is. And when I realized that I was, you know, the one that was at the helm of all of these major life decisions, I was like, Okay, well then changing is easy. It's me.
I definitely agree. I think that we either go through life or we let it go through us, and that
Mhm.
we're playing an active role or an inactive role in everything that happens. And I think that's very true, especially for someone who has had a gun held to her head before. Like, yeah, like there's other decisions and other choices, and you do. There's sometimes both choices suck, but you make a decision that you feel is best for you in that moment. And sometimes I think we also forget to give ourselves grace, like in the moment, is that we're doing the best we can with what we have. But I love that you're able to look back and own it because at
Yeah.
the end of the day, like, man, like that was still our life. We still made choices, but we can still make choices now and change that. And as you say, like, write your new story.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I believe that those little decisions are the way, are the way. And it all starts with that one habit, that one good habit. And I jokingly say to my daughters, because when you're a parent, like you're always trying to find new ways to get through to your kids, And and I tell them that good habits aren't loners. They bring their other good habit friends when you incorporate one into your life. So even if it's waking up an hour earlier, going on a 30-minute walk, for me in my life transformation, it was starting with one good habit, and that was initially biking.
Mhm.
So I got a bike, and I'm not a huge biker anymore. So this disclaimer there. But I got a bike, and I said, you know what? I have this beautiful trail in my neighborhood, and I just started biking every morning, clearing my head. And that led to me choosing a healthier breakfast. And that led to, just this kind of like domino effect. And next thing you know, 6 months later, I was like, wow, I like who I'm becoming, and this was I had so much more work to do on myself. So this was about 7 years ago. But you know, one of my favorite verses is do not despise the day of small beginnings, for the Lord loves to see the work begin.
Mm.
And so it's like you got to start somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, and the first step is often the hardest.
Yeah.
I mean, especially, I'm sure there's many people listening in right now who have been in a dark place or super depressed, and you don't even want to get out of bed and take a shower. And as difficult as that is, it's like the best thing that you can do, but it's that first step. And I'm so glad you brought that up with the habits, like one good habit leading to another good habit, as it's just slowly starting to transform yourself. You don't have to go all in, but it's being willing to put yourself first and your future first and make whatever little change that is that you can do for yourself. I think that's really, really great. Um, I mean, you have such a dynamic personality. Like you've been through all this. You have this deep-rooted faith, you have this positivity, you're wanting better for your life, for your kids' life, and then for others by being able to speak out and help advocate for all these things. And what are some other things that you feel that through advocating and speaking with everything you've gone through that are important for people to hear and understand?
I I believe it's important to remember that bottom is the beginning. A lot of times people feel like rock bottom is the end, and it can feel so overwhelming. And I've been there. If you read my memoir, you'll know that I tried to commit suicide, you know, and I'm very honest about that. This was, uh, long time ago. Long, long time ago. My daughters were toddlers, and they're 16 and 17 now. So I was in a very, very, very dark place. I had just gotten divorced. I lost everything,
Mhm.
everything. Car within 24 hours, home within 24 hours. If you read the story, you'll know why it was exactly 24 hours. And suddenly I went from feeling normal to feeling like the lowest of society.
Mhm.
And Uh, and I almost made the worst decision you can ever make, because I believe that if you have breath in your lungs, then you have a victory in your future. That breath is a sign of your coming victory. And and so bottom is not the end. Bottom is where you build, because you need a strong foundation. And I believe that pain is is our vehicle to process, and pain is usually what we're feeling at the bottom. But pain is a great indicator. It's a great, it's like if your car is about to break down, you don't want silence. That's scary. If you're going 70 miles an hour and everything's fine, the air conditioning's blowing, and it's like, and then suddenly, you're going wild and crazy. You're just like, wow, like where were the lights on the dashboard? Like, gosh, where are the indicators? And so pain is a great way to uh, process and be alerted to the fact that, hey, I need to change. And sometimes changing doesn't have to begin with even kind of taking immediate physical action. And I think that that's something that was true for me, because I wasn't ready to go on walks. I wasn't ready to really do anything, but I was ready to listen to a good podcast that was inspiring, like Unbreakable Hope that Jessica Rose. And I think sometimes we can we can overwhelm ourselves with what change looks like in the beginning.
Mm.
And so it's like, even if all you can do is look up to the sky and say, help, that's a good start. You don't have to be ready to, get a new wardrobe and, you know, find new friends overnight. Just start where is the lightest lift, but start. And I think, those two things, that the bottom is the best place to be at if you want to change, if you really want to change. Because honestly, and I think this has to do with the human condition,
Mm.
we don't really feel a sense of urgency unless life happens on us, and suddenly we have to change.
Yeah.
It's very hard to find that willpower to change unless, calamity is looming or is currently happening. And so I say, hey, use that bottom feeling to allow yourself to keep it real, be honest with yourself, say, okay, I got myself in this situation. And even if you didn't, so I want to, definitely acknowledge that sometimes people experience extremely
Mm.
devastating events that happen to them and that they really did not cause. But the reality is that whether or not you caused it, you are the first responder of your life.
Mm.
And it's up to you to resuscitate and to breathe life into the situation, because change is not easy, it's not fast. I mean, I can tell you, I've been on this journey now for 13 years. 13 years of saying, hey, I need to change. And so it's a long process, but the reality is that there's really only two directions. There's no neutral in life. You are either improving or you're not, or you're devolving.
Mm.
And so, making that decision, starting super small and light so that you can keep up with it. Because you won't stay consistent if you try to change too much overnight. Starting where you can and not being uh, intimidated by the fact that your bottom may be embarrassing to you,
Mm.
you know, because sometimes it can feel like, wow, everyone sees this and I might as well just go and, you know, get another bottle of Jack Daniels because, what do I have to lose? I've already lost my reputation. I've already, it can feel like, what's the point? But truly, I believe that we we have versions of ourselves that are waiting for us to get to them. And they're rooting for us. Like you 5 years from now is like, you got this. Don't give up. Stay in the gym. Like that version of you is just hoping and praying that you shift and that you stay focused, stay consistent, not get intimidated by feeling like you've made too many bad decisions to change, and just kind of allowing yourself to stay in that space a majority of the time, because you're not going to be in that space every day, and that's okay. And I love that you mentioned the grace. It's like you got to give yourself grace. You're going to have bad days where you feel like I suck, life sucks, but it's like have one of those bad days and six of the other inspired days. And if you can have at least six of those days a week, I think you'll be okay. Yep.
I loved when you were saying that sometimes moving forward isn't necessarily like a physical movement or taking an actual step. Sometimes it's a mental one, like being able to admit where we are now and admit that we need to change something. And that you said the podcast, that's definitely, I'm a big audiobook person. So I'm like, okay, what can I learn? How can I grow? Because you're saying like life, you're moving forward unless you're not putting in the energy to move forward and you're just being stagnant and staying stuck in the past. I think that you describe that so beautifully, and it's huge for so many people is that we'll get to a point where we just feel stuck, where we feel like, what's the point? I've tried, and you just get maxed out or burnout or to the point of overwhelm where you're like, there is no point, there's no reason, I should just quit everything. But
Yeah.
taking that step back, and even if the step can't physically go forward, acknowledging where you are and being able to say, okay, this is where I am. This is not where I want to be, but let me give myself a moment to be able to figure out what I need to do. What is my next step? How do I move forward? Because you've had to overcome so much in your life to get to where you are now. And I love that you're saying you're still growing. It's still a process. Would you say I've been doing this process. I've been growing for 13 years, and that's true. It's everything that we experience in life we can grow from, or we can let it completely derail us to where we have to put in a little bit more time and energy to get us back towards moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that because life is hard.
Yeah.
Life
Oh
is
yeah.
hard. And that's one of my favorite sayings is relationships are supposed to be easy. Life is hard. So it's like choose your relationships wisely, because they should, like when you talk to your friends, it should uplift you. When you talk to your partner,
Yeah.
or she should make you feel affirmed, and kids are another category all their own, but they love you to pieces as well. They're difficult. So, and but yeah, I on that note of the unexpectancies from life, I think that it's also important to understand that there is a birth and you know death process of different chapters, of different dynamics, because one thing that you'll find, if you read my memoir, that truly impacted my life was my sister being diagnosed with bipolar with schizophrenia,
Mm.
and losing. my sister, and she was diagnosed
Yeah.
at 18, showed no signs up until 3 months before her 18th birthday. So we're talking 17 years and 9 months and 26 days, who's counting, but like a long time of me building this relationship with one of my favorite people on earth. And when someone's brain is betraying them and you are there in the balance, trying to process, trying to be there for them, it is unlike any other thing I think you can experience. And there's like a small community of people, and you know what I'm saying. There's a small community of people that know what it's like to go through the motions with challenges when it comes to the brain of people that we love, people that we need.
Yeah.
And I I had to go through what I didn't know at the time. And so this is why I feel it on my heart to say that I had to go through a funeral farewell process for the dynamic that we had. I was stuck on that dynamic, and that was feeding my grief.
Hmm.
I was able to cry at the drop of a hat about it. And I still get misty talking about it because I was very attached to how things were.
Hmm.
I felt like it was unfair what was happening to her. I felt like it was unfair what was happening to me. And and you look around and you see everybody on Instagram who's not going through that, and they're all posting with their sisters, and here I am visiting my sister at a psychiatric hospital. And I I allowed myself to grieve the the death of what was. And the way that I did that, what that looked like for me was because I'm a huge journaler. I love to journal every day. I have so
Yeah.
many because you go through the books. So I have like probably over 10 journals from the past how many years. And so I wrote a farewell letter
Mm.
to what we had. I said goodbye. And I ended the letter saying, I am so looking forward to what we have now and how we can show up for each other, how I can show up for you now. And I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm like, and I'm glad that, you know, that we had the memories that we did. That will never be the same. Anyone that has had psychological illness in their family knows it's never the same. So, there's barring, I believe that God can do anything and he can make miracles happen. And so I always want to leave room open for that. But barring that, it's going to stay the way it is. And just understanding that sometimes there are some things that we have to say goodbye to that can't be resurrected, that can't be changed, and and to leave your psyche open to that, because there are people, and I was one of them, that hold on way too long to an idea of something that has clearly left the building. And we're holding on, and we're caught up, and we're crying over it, and we're asking why, and we're acting like it hasn't happened.
Mm.
And it's just like, find a way to hold your own farewell ceremony, a letter or a thought or a prayer, or even if it's you burying something physically, say goodbye so that you can say hello to the new chapter that is in store for you.
Yeah, I 100% I feel that in so many different parallels with my husband's condition is I I had to come to terms with him dying and be okay with him dying in order to be able to be okay with him living. Because when his brain cancer came back, it was a whirlwind. We had so much stuff going on personally within our family, like all this different things. And of course, it was in 2020, right? So just, COVID, that's no big deal. Everything else was chaos. So once we got to the point where he had brain surgery and it didn't go so well, and then we found out he may not live through the month, it's like, oh, wow, okay, this is a lot.
Mm.
And then having to say, okay, he's going to die. I have to be okay with this. What is this going to look like? And then once getting through that initial phase, and then with the brain, like you said, you said it so great. Is her brain betraying her? Oh, yes, yes, yes. For anyone listening, like any
Yeah.
kind of brain injury is a huge betrayal. Um, I love that so much. So with his brain cancer, there's all the cognitive changes that come with it. So we joked for a long time, well, what version of Andrew am I waking up to today? And it's kind of it's fun. This is we've been on this journey for about 5 years. So sometimes it'll be like, oh my gosh, that's part of his old personality coming out. Like what? And then there's stuff where it's like, I don't know where that came from. That is new. I don't like it, or ooh, that's new and I do like it. Like, let's hopefully that stays. So it's just kind of have to be able to accept this crazy roller coaster that we're on now and how it's constantly changing. But I've also had to try a lot harder, which this is probably the stage I'm working on the most, is my friends are also doing this too. They're also having to grieve the Andrew that we lost and having to find if they're okay with it moving forward with the Andrew that we do have, because that's a choice each of us have to make individually when it comes time for different experiences in our lives. So I think that's a really great idea for anybody listening, if it's, a relationship or whatever the circumstance is. I've been to a couple of retreats where we did some stuff where you write down, you throw it in the fire, like that, the symbolism of all of that, or just writing it, getting it out, just
Yeah.
saying it out loud and acknowledging it, I think is also huge, because that goes back to what we said earlier, is you may not be able to take a physical step, but sometimes just saying it, taking a mental step forward, can also really change the course of your life.
It's so true. It's so true. I love the idea of writing it down and throwing it in the fire. I've done that too. I've done that too. And, I think that it's, it's such a, it's a process that I don't know if you ever stop going through when you have a interpersonal relationship with your partner or with a sibling or anyone in your immediate family that uh, requires meeting new versions of them. Um, I don't know if you ever stop going through the process of acceptance and grieving. I think that it's like this cycle. It's a cycle, but the wonderful thing is that I do believe that there is a place of peace for all of us
Yeah.
in it. I've gotten to that place of peace. It took me 10 years, almost. I mean, yeah, because I just got to this place 2 years ago, just full disclosure. So this is a whole fresh off the press perspective. And I wish I could say, oh, I've had this down packed for a while, because she was diagnosed 13 years ago. And if you kind of think back to the other timelines that I told you,
Yeah.
like
Yep.
a lot was going on 13 years ago. You
Yeah.
know? And so, but I came to this place, and what actually led to it was me discharging her from the hospital to come to live at my house,
Mm.
because I was still in a state of denial. Like they say, denial is not a river in Egypt. Like I
Yep.
was,
Yep.
I was totally in denial. And everyone warned me, like, you know, this is beyond you, and she needs to be in this place and things like that. And I was just like, no, this is, my little sister. And I've always been extremely protective over her. I'm 5 years older. And so I've kind of felt like her mom. in a way. And I know my mom will think that's hilarious because I definitely don't have the war stripes and all of the things that go into rearing her. But I just I was in like ignorant bliss, and I'm talking to her on the phone. And at this time, because when a person is on brain medication, they go through different uh, you know, emotional I would say cycles in their mind. And depending on how long it's been since their last dosage, the brain is so sensitive. And so at this time, she was sounding like my Leah. And and she's always my Leah, but my Leah in terms of right before the diagnosis, all of her idiosyncrasies, her personality, I was just like, yes, you're coming home. And we had a big homecoming for her, decorated the whole house, and soon after she arrived, I want to say about a month in, I realized that everyone was right and that I did not have the supervision needed because I'm working full time, remotely, but I have to focus, when I'm on my laptop. And so I'm working remotely. My girls are in school, and like there was a situation, just to, give a visual to what led me to realize, oh, this probably wasn't the best decision. There was like a cooking situation where the plate was on the stove with the fire on and like a steak on top. And I rush in the kitchen and it's 3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like smelling like, who's cooking steak? And I go downstairs and I see this ceramic plate that's like about to burst. And I'm just like, okay, I think I think I got myself in a little situation. And so that, and when we were able to have a smooth transition back to how things are better suited for her. But that was like a huge lesson for me, and understanding, okay, Maria, you have to say goodbye to this version of your relationship. And even though this new version doesn't come with a lot of certainty, because there's these cycles, the emotional cycles, that's actually certainty. They say like the only the only thing that stays the same is change. And so it's like, okay, accepting that things are going to be a little loose as far as her interactions with you. Just like you can, I believe that we can all thrive in our reality if we live in our reality. And I think the not thriving part is when you're fighting your reality and you're not really understanding where you are, and like asking yourself that important question, like, how do I show up here? Like exactly where I am. And and so that was 2 years ago. And it was a huge lesson for me in understanding that just because you want things to be different, it doesn't change anything that that uh, is not going to change. That there are certain ways that I believe that we can affect change on our own life, but when it comes to other people and wanting them to change, and you can't will it into existence, no matter how stable you are. Like if you're in a toxic relationship, it's like you can't be stable enough for the both of you. It's impossible. And accepting that um, is so hard. It's so hard because you do initially the first couple of weeks in that situation, I felt like I was right. And I'm like, you see, everybody, you guys are just, wrong for keeping her in there. And look at me. I'm the good Samaritan. Like I was feeling so good about myself. I felt like the best sister in the whole world. because I do believe that when we fight our reality and we don't accept that you can't change other people, initially we do get that reward because the other party does respond to that stability and to that good um you know positive environment.
Mm.
And so you're kind of tricked a little bit, you know, and but it's yeah, it's not real. It's like what's real is uh you know objective opinion. I think like you can't go wrong with, like there's the verse that says, in the abundance of counsel there is safety, and it's like
Mm.
ask people you trust and you know really take that into account.
And this makes me think back to what we were saying, kind of at the very beginning. The movie Inception is one of my favorite movies. So I love that you're saying like living in your reality. And sometimes it's that moment where you have to realize, like, oh, this is what I thought was my reality, but maybe not so much. I think of that too when it comes to relationships, as we're talking about, you were in a domestic violence relationship. I've been in one too. And I look and I think, how many people saw it before we saw it, but didn't say anything, or maybe they did and we just didn't see it? And that mask that we have to be able to take off, or that cloak that we have to pull down to be able to really see, like, this is what our reality is, and we do need to move forward from that.
Right. Right. We're so blind to it because love covers a lot. Love is powerful. It is so powerful. It can actually blind you. And for me, I did not believe that I was in a domestically violent relationship because in the beginning, every time was always the last time it would ever happen.
Mm.
That's how it was, explained away and forgiven away. And so it was just like, okay, this is an aberration. And I won't label us or you because it's an aberration. But it wasn't until I, and I wish I didn't wait until this moment. So for anyone listening, there is such a thing as waiting until it's too late.
Mm.
And there are people that have had to pay the price with their life.
Yeah.
And they are no longer here because they actually did wait until it's too late. So I think it's important to understand that that is actually a variable that is real and that we want to avoid. But I was, this was the last day of my marriage, and a situation happened, and it had gotten to the point where I was so conditioned to the violence that I I wouldn't even feel sorry for myself.
Mm.
I mainly was just sad it happened, which is weird. I'd be like, wow, why did you do that? Instead of what am I doing in this situation? And so I ended up with a bloody lip,
Mm.
left side. I'll never forget looking in the mirror. I had a hematoma, and I had never even seen a hematoma outside of cartoons. Like you see like the forehead rising up, and like I had never seen that in person before. And I looked in the mirror and I see blood on my mouth and I see a hematoma on my head that looked like a little horn. And I I said to myself, I have to leave for my daughters.
Mm.
I don't I don't want them to believe that this is normal. There's just no way that I can live with myself if they develop memories of this, because right now they're only 2 and 3. and they have no idea what's going on. And I stayed away from my family for like 2 weeks. I didn't see my family. So by the time I saw them, everything had healed.
Mm,
And it was in that moment I was looking in the mirror, and it was just like this unforgettable snapshot where I said to myself, this is not normal. And I refuse to believe that this is what life is for me. And it started there, but what led up to it was not having zero tolerance. And and I believe that one time is too many.
mm,
One time is too many. That if someone is violent with you, I don't care if they're a woman, because sometimes women will feel like they have a past, unfortunately, in our society. But whether you're a woman, whether you're a guy, that there is absolutely no justification for violence of any kind in a relationship. And that includes verbal for me.
mm,
That includes verbal for me. Like, I have zero tolerance for verbal abuse and physical abuse, because the reality is that we are, like we were saying in the beginning of our conversation, we are directing this movie called our life. So we're also the casting director, and you get to choose who's in your life. And so if a person is berating you, being verbally abusive, they're being physically, they're kind of slapping you around, or they even just grab you up too tightly, just know that there are a line of people waiting to be cast in that position, that you are not stuck with that person. And someone can say, oh, well, because people are so unique, I'll never meet this person again. And you know what I have to say to that? I pray to God you don't. Like, that's a good thing, actually. I understand this person maybe is funny, and they have their sweet moments, because that's what I experience. They can be very endearing, but the reality is that even if there's only a little poison in the water, you still gonna drink the water? Like, it's like poison is poison. And it's, if you don't leave, you're gonna keep drinking it. And one day you won't recognize yourself. And eventually it can cost you everything. And so I'm very, very, very passionate about domestic violence, because I think that it's like the secret in a lot of toxic relationships that nobody talks about, because they don't want people to not like their partner. They don't want people to ostracize them,
yeah,
you know. Yeah.
that's definitely true. Is that until you're okay with leaving, it is something where you get ostracized. Well, nobody wants to be around you because you're around him, or yeah. It's a very complex situation. I'm grateful for being able to get out of the relationship that I was in, that was um, very not healthy in so many different ways. And I I just remember feeling stuck, and I'm like, why do I feel so stuck? I'm like, I'm I'm a Marine. Like, this should be easy, right? But it was still, I love that you said that, like, the zero tolerance, right? Because there's also that, give an inch, take a mile thing, that it's like, okay, well, okay, well, okay. And the next thing you know, like, I have okayed way too much for way too long. And then for me, it just got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. But yeah, I think that's how it is for a lot of people who are in relationships like that. You don't notice it at first, you get trapped in it, and then you don't want to speak up, you don't want to say anything, or you start thinking, what is my role in this situation? And how
Right.
can I fix? Like, we
That's
already covered that, right? We can't fix and change other people as much as we want to.
Right.
Oh.
Much do we want to? And it's so tempting because, especially if you're a giver, if
Yeah.
you are an empath
Mm.
and you love showing up for people, that was uh my aspect to navigate. And my mom said something that transformed my life. She said that your strength will also be your weakness if you use it for everything.
Nice.
And so she's like, okay, you're, a giver, Maria, but like if you use it across the board, it's gonna be across to bear.
Mm.
And so, and one might ask, okay, well, I'm already I'm already on this train, like the domestic violence has already happened. It hasn't happened in 2 years. Are you saying I should leave? And was that the suggestion? And at the end of the day, I believe that you you have to do what is most logical in those kind of situations. You can't follow your heart. And I believe that once someone, they say with, kidnapping, which is the most gut-wrenching, you know, one of the most gut-wrenching experiences in life, that they say, don't let the person take you from point A to point B. Get out of that trunk, get out of that car, because once you're at point B,
Mm.
you're not coming back.
Mm.
And so once someone moves you from position A to position B, where they have already violated you, the dynamics and their perspective has already moved to point B. They cannot move back to point A. You will never be someone precious to them.
Mm.
You will never be someone that they feel an altruistic protection over.
Mm.
And and in that moment, you have to think logically and say, okay, life is short. Am I willing to live the rest of my life with someone who does not value me and see my true divine worthiness?
Mm.
Am I willing to go the rest of my life? And and that's a question that, everyone has to answer on their own. But I believe that, zero tolerance, whether you leave today or, whether it has been or it hasn't happened in a long time, and now you're kind of having second thoughts about your decision to leave. I just say, hey, life is way too short. There is a person out there. There is a person out there that is going to cherish you, that is going to feel like the ground you walk on is blessed because it got to touch your feet. That there is a person out there, truly, truly. And I've lived long enough to see that. And you don't want to lose out on that opportunity because, you know, we I don't believe in reincarnation, but so I don't know. There's that contingency plan if you do believe in that. But if you don't, if you believe like I do that this life is the one life we have, it's worth um being alone and working on yourself and giving your life room so that the right person has space to enter.
Yeah, I think that's there's so we've covered so many really great topics and so many great nuggets in this chat, and I definitely feel like we could go on talking for days about all these really important things. And I know we're close on time, but I want to say, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to make sure that our listeners hear, or are there a final thought that you have for everyone?
Oh, wow. I would say that hope springs eternal.
Mm.
Start where you are, start where you're at, start today. Start today. No matter what time you're listening to this, even if it is 11:59 and you're like, I'm just going to start at 12 midnight, start at 11:59, like start where you are, because the path only illuminates when you're going in the right direction.
Yeah.
When you're going in the wrong direction, you're going further down, and it only gets darker when you go further down anywhere. And once you are on path and you start, whatever avenue that is, it could be fitness, it could be finances, it could be your relationship, your career, your children, your partner. There's so many different aspects that we're all trying to improve, but don't wait for an official day, an official time. Don't wait for a sign. Don't wait for the equipment. Don't wait for the class. Don't wait for the conversation. Start exactly where you are at. And like we discussed earlier, even if that's listening to an audiobook, put your mind in the right direction, in the path, one step at a time, because the way that this dimension, this world works, for some reason, we only see the next step. Like, we can have plans for the 21st step, and we can see it in our imagination, but for better or worse, we are only able to actually visually, in our mind's eye, visually see the next necessary step. And so, but you won't even see that next step until you put yourself in the right direction. So turn your body, turn your mind onto the path that is the highest expression of yourself. And I believe that we all know what that looks like. I believe that that's an intrinsic gift that we're born with. And maybe you don't know what the entire picture looks like. You don't know what you're going to be doing, who you're going to be with. There are certain idiosyncrasies, but I do believe that intrinsically we know what a higher version of ourselves looks like. But, there's that. If someone asked you name 3 things that you experience in your best life ever, and you're living your best life ever, 3 wishes granted kind of thing. What does that look like? And everyone's going to have different answers, but we have an idea of what that is. And it's like, the next great question to ask yourself, and this is what I had to do, is, based on my current life circumstances, what can I do about it now with what I have? And so for the screenwriting example, I entered that contest, and I remember thinking, I don't have what's called the final draft software, which is the official software for writing screenplays.
Mhm.
And so I said to myself, I don't even know if I can enter this contest, but, kind of leaning into the start now, start where you are, I wrote the entire screenplay in my iPhone notes,
Wow.
just so that I was in direction. And now I have, been a part and edited a film that's available on Amazon, and I'm actually a real screenwriter, but that was 10 years ago, putting myself in direction by taking that first small step, and not hesitating. Just go for it, because you actually have nothing to lose. You have nothing to lose. When it comes to pursuing a better life, because of course, there are certain behaviors and actions we can take. We have something to lose, right? You want to drink and drive, you have something to lose. You want to do just have a practice destructive behavior, you actually do have something to lose. But when it comes to moving yourself in the right direction, there's nothing to lose, everything to gain. And final thoughts I'll say is, I'm just reiterating that my website is authormariarose.com. I have a workshop that I created on there. It's free. It's called Your Best Life Now. And it's 8 courses that you can complete at your own pace. And at the end of completing it, you get a certificate of self-mastery. And I poured my heart and soul into this course to kind of help give anyone that wants to do it right direction movement. Say you're like, I don't know where to start. Well, start at this course, start at this workshop. And that's free. I also have a blog on there called Celibate in the City, and a little spin-off Sex in the City. It's just about abstaining from things that no longer serve us.
Mm.
So it's not necessarily about abstaining from sex, but it's just, like an abstinence mindset from things that just are not productive in our life, not producing the life that we deserve. And then lastly, I'll just say thank you, Jessica Rose. Thank you so much. I like you said, I could talk to you all day long, and I've had such a slamming time.
Yeah, well, I'm so excited that we connected and I got to hear some of your story, and there'll be all the links in the description box for people to click on, and I can't wait to check them out and read your book and everything. And I appreciate all the growth that you're willing to share and your vulnerability sharing these parts of your story, because I think that's a big piece of it, right? Is if we keep things in the dark, they grow. And if we let it, the darkness will consume us. But if we seek the light, we can move forward, as you're saying, and we can change those things and we can live this one life that we get. So thank you for your time and all of your knowledge that you've shared with all of us. And I can't wait to stay in touch.
Me too. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. If you found this episode inspiring, please share it with someone you never know who needs more light in their life. May this serve as a reminder that there's always darkness in the world. Do not let it consume you. Always seek the light. Please take a moment to do the good old subscribe, rate, and review. Your support means so much to me, and it helps me spread more light and love. Until next time, be kind, be loving, be human, and don't ever let anyone steal your hope.